let's talk about happiness.
Let's talk about happiness, and does it even exist anymore here in the United States, and to what extent? Let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. There was a very interesting report here from Yahoo News, and it was a write-up specifically about how the American dream now costs $3.4 million. And the overall way that they arrived at that math was that between marriage, 2 kids, homes, healthcare, cars, and education, an estimated $3.45 million over the course of a lifetime, a new Investopedia study has found. This is from December of 2023, but has actually been readjusted now at this point. They say that the cost of raising children in particular, just 2 to the age of 18, now totals $576,896, that the lifetime cost currently with the 10% down payment on average and a 30-year fixed rate mortgage of approximately 7%, which is where we're at right now, is $800,000. That's actually possibly the most stunning part to me, because it really shows us where, how the massive impact of interest rates can affect this. Car purchases, lifetime on average, given how people are spending, it's about $270,000, another very, very significant chunk. But let me tell you guys, the one that hurts more than any of this in the breakdown is average family premium cost. 39 years of annual for a family of 4. $934,000 out of pocket just for health insurance. Out of pocket. And the craziest part is that doesn't even include the hospital birth that they list here at the top, which is $5,700, because that's what people are paying out of their damn deductibles.
Yeah, and so, that doesn't actually include your medical. That is just your premium.
Yeah, like just the premium, not medical.
It's insane.
It's funny because retirement in this is less than a lifetime health insurance cost.
Crazy.
That is what outraged me, actually, most about this. The top line figure, you know, we can debate and spend some time on that. And a lot of this is fungible. Like you can buy cheaper cars, you can buy a smaller house, you can choose to go to state college and all of that. But you really can't choose to not have health insurance in this country. That's one of the most fixed costs in this entire thing. It is the single biggest chunk of your overall lifetime expenses. And what do we know is that this currently is just based on 2018 and the 2020 costs. There's actually been an inflation, huge inflation in health insurance costs. Health insurance costs inflation far outstrips normal CPI inflation. And I haven't even mentioned food and cost of living and all of this. So the likely number is probably higher. So the point of all this is just that the cost has gone significantly up from where it was previously. And then lo and behold, it turns out that the U.S. has slid down in the ranking of overall national happiness. Let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. Finland, for some reason, and we'll talk about this in a second, but let me focus on the U.S. part at least right now. The U.S. has now slipped from the top 20 of nations in overall happiness. But what is particularly noteworthy is that inside of the report, what we find is that it is largely attributable to young people. It's that the people who are over the age of 30, their overall happiness ranking has not really gone, and by the way, this is all self-reported, their overall happiness ranking has either remained static or has gone up, but that the drop in the young, the happiness has actually slid all of the U.S. below the top 20 for the first time in quite a long time.
So they surveyed 143 countries. The unhappiest country, by the way, is Afghanistan, which we obviously had a significant hand in. Way to go, guys. The U.S. ranked 10th for people who are 60 and older. They still feel pretty good about things. But 62nd for people under 30. 62nd for people under 30. They quote an economist in one report who said, "I have never seen such an extreme change," talking about the drop in happiness among younger people. This has all happened in the last 10 years. It's mainly in English language countries. There isn't this drop among young people in the world as a whole. And this report I looked at also talked to a young person who was not feeling too happy, who said, listen, we have less to look forward to. In the future, there's going to be climate change that will affect the way we live. There's less of a clear-cut trajectory for our life paths because for so long, it was so easy just to know you could get married, have your 2.5 kids, pay for your house. Now that path is a lot more closed. And going back to some of those components that make up the $3.5 million that you need just to do the basics of the, like, you know, middle-class American dream life. Have a house, go to college, get married, have kids, be able to retire, have health insurance. Those pieces, those core components, have gone up in price wildly over the past several decades. So, we've talked a lot about inflation in terms of near-term cost of living, those things obviously incredibly important. But part of why you see this overall trajectory of people saying, we're on the wrong path, of people saying the American dream is no longer reality, of young people feeling so depressed about the current state of their lives and their possibility for the future, is that long-term massive price spike in education, healthcare, and housing that has made life so much more precarious for younger generations.
Yeah, so again, I mean, just to be 60 seconds, some of the countries that beat us are Guatemala, Bulgaria, and Saudi Arabia, which is pretty crazy, especially Saudi Arabia, because if you're a female in Saudi Arabia, you don't even have any rights, and it's like, you're happier than people are here in America? That doesn't sound right. Well, look, what we can glean from this is that I think almost all of it comes back to housing, and that is one of the, just because housing is the biggest expense you're going to make in your entire life. So if you're not able to make that,
apparently healthcare is more.
Well, yes. So housing and healthcare.
Yeah.
I guess housing because it's the biggest upfront cost you're going to make in your entire life, right? In terms of the largest purchase. Unable to save for that. That is what delays marriage, people having kids. America is one of the very few countries in the world where people report wanting more children than they're able to afford. In some countries like Japan and others, it's not like they don't have the money to have kids, they just genuinely don't want to have children. But America is one of those places where people want to have 2.2, between 2.5 kids, which is replacement rate. And so they just simply can't afford it. And we just read everybody the numbers there, and they feel it would be irresponsible, or they wouldn't be able to have a reasonable quality of life if they were able to do so. I have always found that very, very sad statistic, because it's one of those where that's the exact reason why people are supposed to work hard. It's not supposed to you can have nice cars or whatever. It's supposed to, being able to raise kids, have family. That's largely where you're going to derive the vast majority of happiness in your life. And there's reams of data to back all of that up. The problem that we can see inside of this is both from the very, very early level, and this is where I'm curious too what you think. Everyone keeps blaming social media, but I'm like, I just think social media is a reflection of what people accurately feel. It's not TikTok, Instagram Reels, and other things that go viral about people being unable to afford life. That's not a fake circumstance. Like, in my opinion, it goes viral and it gets shared because people can resonate with the themes and kind of what people are talking about. There's a big debate right now as to whether it's causal in terms of social media, but I still genuinely believe that it's very just reflective of what the actual living conditions are.
I mean, when you look at the fact that young people around the world have social media, and they're not all seeing this precipitous decline in how they feel about, their life and their level of happiness, I think that is, pretty decent proof in your direction. I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that consistently places like Finland, the other Nordic countries, Denmark, Iceland is another one that does well in these happiness rankings. These are all social democracies where things like you're not going to be paying $1 million over the course of your lifetime for health insurance. You're going to have health care universally. It's not going to be something that you worry about. They have more of a solid social safety net, more subsidies in terms of housing, making housing more affordable and paying more attention to that as well. So I don't think it's an accident that those are consistently the places where people self-report the highest levels of happiness. I also think we'd be remiss if we didn't point out that part of this, catastrophic decline for young people in self-reported happiness also coincides with COVID. And, we know that had a tremendous impact on levels of anxiety and overall mental health for young Americans. So, I don't think we can ignore that piece as well, even as I do think that these long-term economic trends are incredibly significant in terms of how people feel about the direction of their own lives and the direction of the country.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. I think you're absolutely right. Okay, this is the only thing about Finland. I've been to Finland. Man, Finland is dark as hell. People there are not smiling. I'm just not sure I buy it. Like, maybe they self-report happiness, but from having traveled all the Nordic countries, these are some of the most like closed off folks that you will ever see in your entire life. They even they joke about it, about how Americans are too smiley and they talk all the time. And so I'm like, are you guys really that happy? Like, be honest. Leave us in the comments. Also, the food, let's all be real. There's not a scrap of flavor in any of the food that's up there.
That's the power of social democracy.
It
can overcome bad food, terrible climate,
rotten fish, goulash.
Dark all day long in the winter. That's how powerful social democracy is, Saagar.
No, I don't think so. I would say there is some argument about that, though, Krystal, about whether we could even have I mean, this is a more important question. Kind of relates back to immigration, but you know, these are very highly homogenous societies where, look, what are the real differences when you all look the same, talk the same language, you have very, very low levels of immigration. In terms of their tax and capital, in terms of their innovation and all that, what's the last thing Finland really invented? So I'm not going to put it down and say that that's not a worthy model. The question is, can it ever actually succeed in a country of 330 million?
Because we have Social Security. It is one of the most successful and popular universal social safety net programs in history. And I would argue the exact counter, that when you have the level of rapacious, predatory, state-captured capitalism that creates this zero-sum seeming game and high stakes, that's exactly what exacerbates and opens up an opportunity for unscrupulous, self-serving politicians to stoke these divides. Where if you have a social safety net where people feel more secure and more stable, then they're less susceptible to those type of divide and conquer tactics, which are so effective and so ever present in terms of our politics.
I don't even disagree. It's more just a question of like, what is America? Like, for example, the largest company in Finland by market cap is like 42 billion. Like, that's a freaking joke. Like, this is not a country.
And that's because they have free healthcare?
No, I have no idea why. I don't even think it's necessarily because they have free healthcare. There's a lot of crappy European countries that also have very, very little business. My only question is about America is a very dynamic country. We make a lot of money here. People like entrepreneurialism. It's a huge country. There's 330 million people from all over the world. We have very different ideas. We have a very, Finnish politics. I'm not 100% familiar, but as I understand it, in general, the way that ours functions and the way that we kind of go at it like that, it doesn't really exist in the same way in a lot of these places. I don't know, though, whether that's because of our economics or not, right? So even in times of high economic prosperity, I was looking at this fascinating graph. The top earning cities in America in 1949 were like Cleveland, Detroit. It was all in the American heartland, from industrial manufacturing from the post-World War II era. And I was thinking about how different of a country it was whenever the richest people in America were also the people who actually produced stuff. This is all just kind of me trying to wrap my head around whether any of this is even possible in America. Like I lived in Denmark. It's a tiny ass little country. They don't have a lot of people there.
I mean, but also you're ignoring the fact that like the time period in American history when probably we had the highest levels of self-reported happiness was during the New Deal. And when you had, and partly this was just because of post-World War II global circumstances that we overwhelmingly benefited from, but you had a middle class that was expanding. You had people who felt like they were able to, achieve the American dream, and this idea of we're able to work hard and we're able to get ahead was more present. And seemed more realistic. And the numbers in terms of the cost of housing then versus now, the cost of healthcare then versus now, the cost of education then versus now also bear that out. Not to mention the way that wages have not even come close to keeping up with the increased productivity of the American worker. So, of course we can, that's why I'm not advocating. You're right that there's a balance, right? You don't want to lose that creative spark and that innovation that at its best we all, have so much pride in as Americans. You don't want to lose that. That's why I'm not like out here asking for communism.
So I understand.
That's why I think social democracy is, has proven to be a good balance of some of those competing priorities of making sure everybody's good, especially in a wealthy, prosperous society, but also allowing for innovation, creativity, and that fruitful hum that we, again, at our best get here in America.
That's fair. One thing we should steal from the Finns is sauna. Finnish saunas are awesome.
I hate saunas. But
oh, man, no. Hey, everybody. Anyway, we'll talk about it later.
Listen, I'm a sweaty person to start with. I don't need a freaking sauna. That's like my worst nightmare. So
no, but the Finnish model is great. It's like you get hot, then you get cold, then you get hot, and you get cold again. It's a lot of fun. If you ever go to Finland, I highly recommend it.
Finns, you can keep that. You can keep that part to yourself.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.